A International Standards Organization, ISO standards. These are standards for the globe, for industry, for electronics, for trash management, for well drilling. If you remember back, and it's been going on for a long time, but a big challenge to industry was ISO standards. You heard big things about ISO 9000, ISO 9001, 9002, 9003, depending on what part of global manufacturing you were in. ISO standards, what else does that mean? ISO standards are communication standards for the global internet. Those are ISO standards. IPv6 that we're migrating to are international standards that international corporations, no states' rights involved here, try to follow and adhere to. So when they get ISO registration, and you see that next to their goods and labels and advertising, to a group of people, that has a pretty specific meaning that they're following global standards, not state standards, global standards. ISO also owns the globe's weights and measurements out to however many decimals anybody's weighting and measuring. This is what our tax dollars pay for. We have the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, used to be the National Bureau of Standards, that I was trained under, educated under, used those standards. When they changed to NIS, I was no longer working in the precision field, so it wasn't as much of a worry. But in program management, which was one of my things, I helped corporations develop 9001 certifications, 9002 9003 certifications, the procedures and the processes, because that was my life, is procedures and processes. You're following in the footsteps of your peers and your neighbors. When you're calibrating an instrument, the instrument is calibrated to international standards. That's the big world that's out there. This is kind of the thing that maybe the UN manages a little bit, but it's its own organization. It's nothing. It works with the UN, let's say. So that's global science. This is the way science is. I can go anywhere and measure something under either SAE or metric standards and understand the relationship and work in either environment or both environments, because many times they're mixed. You have American. So what does that mean? It's the conversation of becquerels, sieverts, joules, energy conversion factors. All of this is tied into these international standards. So I talk about. I've done some other videos on network security. IPv6 I mentioned, which is a huge. Uh, Basically, V6 is going to allow you to be tracked very, very closely, because it's a part of the built-in record of the transport of your information package across the globe. So wherever you come from, that MAC address, machine address code, another set of ISO standards. So if you find some ISO standards and want to talk about them and how you implement them, this goes to Flint drinking water. This is kind of what triggered this. Yeah, I get triggered easy. But Flint drinking water, they're professionals that manage drinking water systems, follow these ISO standards and rules and procedures. And very clearly, what they did in Flint was a no-no. The risks associated with what they did, but they're pleading ignorance because they're only politicians. They were told, it was their mandate. So all of the technicians, the engineers, the people, you'll see lawsuits against them. Well, it's they're doing their job. They're following their boss's orders. If there was a place inside of Michigan politics to go, oh, maybe whistleblower, if Michigan papers cared to follow closely on these things and talked about, but the Michigan papers don't do that. Very few newspapers do that. Very few reporters do that. because it was before the fact. There was no big sensational story. There was only a potential for harm. And what's a potential for harm? Well, it's nuclear, it's chemical, it's biological, it is invasive species, it is invasive words in many conversations, it is pollution. So this was my world, these ISO standards, international engineering standards, for 4 decades. Part of what I saw was a building of DECnet, or the outcomes, very early on in the building of the original networks that our transport protocols rely on. So buried inside of IPv6 is still a transport structure from basic fundamental Internet 101 4 decades ago. We've just made it better. In making it better, though, we have to carry legacy crap that breaks us. That was Bill Gates' Windows problem. Talk about another software problem. Boeing. Go back in my videos. I specifically said it was a software deployment issue. It was not hardware. It was Boeing and a poor software release process. These are more standards. These are capability maturity model standards, which is software development methodology, another big process area I was a part of. I was a part of developing the CMMI model, which, if you CMM, go look at what that is, and we could talk about how it was built and responsibilities it put on suppliers and additional costs. So systems, that's really what the world runs on. We've got this standards organizations out there. Now, there's some parallel standards organizations we know about. People go every Sunday to these standards organizations, but their basis is just another corporate opinion. These churches are corporations. Those buildings are corporations making a hidden profit, buying Learjets, the most inefficient way, the most subsidized, federally subsidized transport on the planet are these corporate Learjets. They park at our airports that we built with our federal dollars. They have private entrances and exits we built with our federal dollars for their private jets. Their jets to shuttle underage women across the planet to parties that I wouldn't want to go to begin with. So there's your corporate jets. That's the world we've made. We subsidize these bastards at every step, and they don't appreciate a bit of it. We build their airports. Migrant labor goes for 2 years away from home to build a huge plant. They fill neighborhoods with incoming people for a couple of years, thousands of people for a construction project, a big one, and then they disappear. That's America's migrant labor. That's the illegal aliens from 6 states over that underbid the contractors in your state because of different labor rates. So states' rights, oh yeah, yeah, brag. That's where corporations are hiding, and just about everything's a corporation because liability. Longer political rant. This one wasn't a rant. This is how things work in the real world. Very little magic in between.